Villa podcast back again. The way we like to be as well, Dan. Obviously not in person, but we're back. You can see both of us. You would have heard the god-awful intro music that you guys have been complaining about. I promise I'll sort that out. But as always, I'm here with my good friend Dan Moisican. How you doing, Dan?
Yeah, bro, I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. There's a lot of things to be happy about recently with Aston Villa. Obviously, the kit's come out. I think that's divided a few people's opinions, but we've got a little while to wait until we can get our hands on that. I believe it's tomorrow. And of course, transfer season is in full flow, Dan, which means one thing and one thing only. Akira Sports News Network are back on Twitter.
God, none of us happy to see that. I'm fed up with all the ITKs already, mate. But no, I think we're just going to run through a few of the more solid rumours today, a few of our own that we perhaps like to see. You did an article that went down like a treat, mate, on a player that we both like. You specifically in Weston Mckenney and co. Everyone seemed to love that one, didn't they?
Yeah, it went down quite well, actually. I was surprised. I think I was actually more surprised at the amount of people who'd heard of him and watched him. I guess it's a good thing with the Bundesliga returning, although there was a few people who said they didn't fancy the look of him. But I believe Schalke went 8 games without a win during Project Restart. Yeah. So obviously, understandably, people were worried about my suggestion. But we'll get on to Weston Mckenney a bit later on in the podcast. This is the Transfer Rumour Mill podcast. We're going to be doing these kind of things semi-regularly as news kind of comes. We're going to cover all kinds of things from the likes of Benrahma and Watkins, which has been touted for a long time. And I think we can at least say that I think comfortably one of them transfers will get done at Villa, I'd say. Obviously not being in the know, we can't stand it in the know, but just kind of going off what we're seeing from Twitter, from the tabloids, and just knowing what Dean Smith's relationship is like with these players anyway, it seems like a no-brainer. And Villa have reportedly had a £24 million bid, I believe, accepted for Ollie Watkins. Now, this is a man who he's risen up the leagues. He's a tremendous story. Only 21 years old, I believe, scoring 24 goals for Brentford last season. A similar story, Dan, to Scott Hogan. I say it, rising up the leagues, goal scorer. But Ollie Watkins, this kid is the real deal, Dan, for me. He can play a variety of positions across the forward line. And, it's a deal that I really hope Villa can get done.
Yeah, it's one that I really like the sound of. I've actually got a mate who's a Plymouth Argyle fan, and Ollie Watkins was formerly of Exeter. And for him to tell me that he liked him and he thought he was a good player meant that, I'm convinced on this guy, because for him to cross the divide and praise a player from the opposite side of that derby means good things. But no, Ollie's a great player. He's someone that has improved every season. That's what I like. If you look at his goal contributions the last 3 seasons, they progressively get better. And, if you just look at the numbers without watching him, you think there's just been this crazy boom this season. His most goals in a season was 10 before. He's gone up to, I think, 24, as you were saying. But that's because he's been playing through the middle this season. He's usually featured off the left. And as you said, he's got that ability to play anywhere across the front 3. But this season, Brentford have sort of deployed him primarily as a striker, and that's where they've seemed to get the best results out of him. All through his Brentford career. He's such an unselfish player, and that's what I like. He's got that eye for goal, but when you look at him in that BMW, as it's dubbed, front 3, they're all so unselfish, and they're all just as happy to get an assist as they are to get a goal. And that's what I like about Ollie Watkins, and that's why I think he'd fit into our front 3. I'm going to speak on a few players later that I think would sort of do a similar job, but I think now I wouldn't have said this before, but I actually am starting to be convinced that Jack's best position is off the left.
Yeah.
I think that's probably where we're going to see him played. And so if we can get, those forward 3 players interlinking and matching up, and we can get the midfielders coming from deep and running past them, if we have an unselfish striker like Watkins who's happy to share the ball, then I think it works well for Villa.
Absolutely. As you kind of touched on, and as I mentioned in my article about Weston Mckenney, Villa need to make the decision: are they going to splash the cash on a striker and just a single winger, and then maybe bring in another cheaper backup, so as you can keep Jack up there and you've got funds for a midfielder? Because it's been the talking point of the whole season where Jack Grealish's best position is. And I don't think you can argue with the goal contributions that we've seen from him. Around that November, December time, where he was playing on that left wing. I think that is a position that we will see him adopt now, and especially when you're looking at how he's going to get into potentially the England team. I know Southgate is, he's looking at him against players like Sancho, Hudson-Odoi. But I think, to be honest, Jack has proven that he is a class above in that category and can play on the wing. So I think that is something that will be persisted. And I think it's interesting as well because, we talk of signing Watkins and Jack playing on the left. What does that mean for a move for Said Benrahma, Dan?
Yeah, well, this is the one that I think we're seeing really exciting Villa fans. It's a player that, sometimes you get these players come up from the Championship, you're Tarat and the like, that are just full of this flair and have the league on strings all season. And Said has done that. He's a player that you're just one of those players that makes you really enjoy watching teams like Brentford, and I think players like him are largely why they were such a popular. People, they didn't end up going up in the end, but I think so many people wanted them in the Premier League just because they have these young, exciting players, and Said epitomises everything that Brentford are about. They're this energetic, free-flowing attacking side, and with him at the forefront, we've all seen those compilations on Twitter and watched him in the games where all the sombreros and the little flip flaps, and he's just full of those. And he's a player that rightly Villa fans are getting excited about, and he's one of the players that these players are going to leave Brentford this season. There's no doubt about that. My only problem with Benrahma is that I think he top six sides wanted him. I saw links throughout the season. Chelsea wanted him. Arsenal were looking at him. Those other London clubs. And he's had such a good season that he's worthy of a move like that. And I think what a coup he would be if he did come to Villa. The stats speak for themselves. But I think with the only sort of little query I've had is that we've seen him in some big games in the Championship season, not just in the playoffs. But when they needed him most in those games like Stoke away, where Brentford, ended up drawing, and I'm not going to say he went missing, but those are the moments where you want your big players like Benrahma to crop up and create something and get those, just one of those goal contributions that he's been adding up over the season. And he didn't quite do that. He was exciting in the playoff final. He was there in the midfield, and in transition, he was making things happen for Brentford. But in the final third, where you want him, those moments were lacking. And look, I don't suppose this is something to be worried about or anything like that. What a player that he is. But as I said, these players are going to leave Brentford this season, and fingers crossed, mate, that we see him in claret and blue next year.
For as excited as we are for signing these, potentially signing these players, there are Villa fans who are slightly concerned that, despite going for Watkins and Benrahma, who I think clearly have the attributes to be able to make that step up to the Premier League, that are worried that we're signing Championship players and we're not going out and spending, the best part of 60 million on, let's say, a Tammy Abraham or someone like that. I think they're fair criticisms to some degree, but I think the thing that gets me is we finished one place above the relegation zone. So despite how much money we have and how much of a coup it is to play in the Premier League and to play for a big club like Aston Villa, of course we're going to say that. At the end of the day, it's going to be still slightly difficult to try and attract players, isn't it, Dan? And you're not going to see your Belottis or your Fernand, not Fernand Torres, he's gone to Man City, but you're not going to attract these kind of big players from the continent necessarily straight away because we were a point away from being relegated then.
Yeah, well, I think that's true, mate. There are sides that are far more appealing than us in the Premier League at the moment, but there's enough of a pull. I think we won't necessarily see too many big names because I think we have a relatively big budget this season, but we have a lot that we need to do with it. And I think that's why we won't see the permanent move for Tammy that everyone wants, because Chelsea are going to want 40, 50 million. And the debate for whether that's a fair fee is a completely different conversation. but that's what they're going to want. That, you know, Chelsea are a club who we've seen have got the money. They don't need to sell Tammy for a cut price fee, and that's why, you know, that would take up half to, you know, half of our budget right there. And so I think we need to again be not shrewd. I don't think we're going to make the mistake of doing the £5 to £10 million sort of market. Again, I think it's going to be around 20 million, perhaps double that, and hopefully we sort of get double the quality as well. But look, we're you know, Villa fans who are expecting us to be going stumping up 40, 50 million for players from top six sides or players from on the continent, you know, perhaps need to lower their expectations a little while. And yeah, I think that's the kind of, we need to be accurate. We don't want to be overpaying for players, but we do need to get that right injection of quality as well.
Absolutely. And talking about managing expectations, before we go on to our transfer wish list, which we'll do to round off this podcast, I think it's important that we talk about the James McCarthy deal that is allegedly on the cards. £5 million. Now, I know, you know, you literally just said that you don't think we'll be operating in that kind of market, but I feel, and I know I'm in a minority here, but I do think this is a good bit of business if Villa can get this done. He's a player who's played 296 Premier League games, I believe, available for £5 million. That kind of experience, and you know, I believe he's definitely twice the player that Danny Drinkwater is. And as much as I love Lansbury, I think he offers more than H does on the bench. Someone who's entering his final year of his contract. So I think that, you know, there really does have to be a balance if you're going to go and spend the best part of 50 million on the likes of Benrahma and Watkins. I think this 5 million for McCarthy, who's clearly going to be a squad player, because I think we've got that kind of midfield three tied down. I think the only one that is in question really is Conor Hourihane as for a starting place. I think Villa will be in the market for a box-to-box midfielder. But, you know, I don't really have an issue with signing James McCarthy for £5 million down.
No, I'd relate it to another signing that has been touted quite a lot is the free deal for Jeff Hendrick. Yeah. These players aren't attractive. You know, they're not the big European names. They're not the players that you know, Villa fans necessarily expected us to be linked with. But we do need these squad players. One of the things that hurt us so much at the lockdown, one of the things that was so depressing about looking at our team sheet, is just the lack of options off the bench. And look, if you can get a player like, you know, if you can get Jeff Hendrick in and James McCarthy for around £5 million, then you absolutely do that for me, because you're right. You know, Danny Drinkwater, we saw, came in, just offered very little. You know, even someone like, I'm potentially taking someone like James McCarthy up at the base of that midfield over Marvelous Nakamba. Just the Premier League know-how and the experience. Just someone that I would probably prefer to be coming off the bench. He'd be a great option in the cup games. I don't think he'd demand a starting spot either. I don't think either of them would, coming in on such a low fee. But no, these are players that would definitely help the club. You know, if it's for 10 games a season, 15 games a season, coming off the bench, helping us see out games with that, you know, almost 300 games of Premier League experience that you were talking about, then that's something we got to do, mate.
Absolutely. And to round off this mini Transfer Rumour Mill podcast, we're now going to go through just some signings that we'd like to make. I'll start it off with one of mine. And obviously, as we mentioned at the top of the podcast, Weston Mckenney is a player who is apparently available for as little as £18 million, which I cannot believe. He is a 21-year-old American national team player who is a box-to-box midfielder, plays for Schalke. And I've written an article on him. The link for that will be in the description, so as you can get a bit of a better gauge on what Weston is like as a player. But he's definitely, he's your box-to-box kind of player, full of energy, covers so much ground, which for me is the deciding factor, really. You need players who are going to be prepared to run, who are fit, who can cover all this ground. And is a good passer of the ball as well, has an eye for goal and is constantly looking to go beyond the striker. And as we are a team who plays in a 4-3-3, that's so important. It's something that we've been lacking so much. And Weston isn't covered in goals by no means. But, you know, he's a kid who scored in the Champions League. He assisted in the Champions League on his debut. And he's a midfielder who is destined for greatness. He's not been linked with Villa by any means, so do not take this or my article as an in the know this is an absolute pipe dream. He's been linked with Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs. I believe Southampton have apparently made contact as well, which, when I look at, I know I said to you, Dan, earlier in the podcast, but about us struggling to be able to attract players so low in the table. But I mean, we should have no problem if you're entering in a competition with Southampton to sign a player. I'd really love Weston McKenney at Villa.
Yeah, he's a great player, mate. I think he's exactly the sort of profile that we should be looking for. I know you and I are both big fans of these young US MNT players. I always wax lyrical about Weston. Tyler Adams as well is another great player in the Bundesliga that's doing very similar things over at Leipzig. I think he'd be an absolutely great fit. And the midfielder that I was talking about and that I was asking is Rodrigo de Paul from Udinese. Someone that has had a really, really good season. He's Udinese finished 13th. They didn't exactly light up Serie A this season, but Rodrigo de Paul was a standout in that midfield. 7 goals and 6 assists. Can play both the 8, the 10. Can play on the left wing, and I think the versatility is important in this Villa squad. He's an electric dribbler. He's got a great eye for a pass and a goal. He's been great in the lockdown, and I think that recency is important when we look at players. Since we came back and Serie A returned, goal contributions against Roma, Napoli, Juve. So we can do it in these big games, and he's just 24 years old. He's a player that I'm really interested in. Transfer marks value him at just 18 million, so the same fee as Weston. I think he'd be a steal for that price. People that know Rodrigo would say that's perhaps a low fee, but Udinese do sell these players for cheap. Zielinski went for 14 million, Handanovic 13. They sold Alexis Sanchez, Roberto Pereira. They are a selling club, unfortunately, and I think they're both profile-wise very similar players. These two midfielders that are looking to get beyond the striker, that can make something happen, quick, sharp on the ball. I think it's interesting that we've spotted a similar profile in midfielder there, mate.
Definitely, it's something that has been glaringly obvious with Villa. The fact that there's, to be fair, the goals have been fairly evenly shared, but they've had to have been because we've not had a 20-goal a season striker. I think if you look at the top scorers, obviously Jack's up there with 10, I believe. Then you've got Wesley, who got 5. And other than that, you're looking at, the likes of Conor Hourihane, who I believe has got 5 himself as well. El Ghazi's got 6. So it's important that the goals can come from the midfield areas when, you're lacking in the striking department. Hopefully, both of them issues will be addressed. And a player who I know you're a big fan of, Dan, I saw you tweet about him yesterday. Barcelona Academy. I don't want to say reject, but he left, obviously, at Real Madrid now. Kubo. And if you've read the Birmingham Mail as well, we've apparently had a loan offer rejected for him, which is even crazy to think that we actually went for Kubo. And he's a player that obviously you'd want to get on loan. You're not going to be able to buy from Real Madrid when you've finished 17th in the Premier League. As I say, we absolutely know our level. But could you imagine getting a player like this on like a 2-year loan? He's so quick and skillful, and seeing him train with the Real Madrid first team and that before his loan out, he's had a very successful spell at Mallorca, I believe.
Mallorca, yeah.
And I mean, it's such a shame because it's not very often you get to sign a Galactico, is it? It would have been insane. A 2-year loan deal. He's quick. He's got an eye for goal. He's got an absolute wand of a left foot. And although, the bid has been rebuffed, I would have loved to have seen Kubo at Villa Park, Dan, even if it was, just on a short-term basis.
Yeah, he's a great little prospect, mate. And not too unrealistic. We saw Wolves come up and get Jesus Vallejo on loan from Real Madrid. And the Premier League is an appealing place to come out and get these players. Take is, again, you look at Mallorca where they finished in the league. They really struggled for goals this season, and you can question the lad, but he was there. Absolute shining light. The Mallorca fans absolutely loved him. He was so everything that Mallorca did that was good. Take was at the heart of. I think got 7 or 8 goal contributions in La Liga in just 24 starts, which for an 18-year-old playing for a bottom of the table side is really something impressive. And yeah, I think that sort of midfield creativity is exactly what we need. He can play on the wings as well, and a player that sort of again sort of similar profile, a little bit older, from a side that finished bottom of the league. A player that I would absolutely love to see in Claret and Blue is Emi Buendia. Out in Norwich. I loved watching Emi Buendia this season. He had a direct hand in 30% of Norwich's goals this season, which is remarkable. He can play both wings. He's only 23. He's very confident on either foot. And I think if you had a striker with Jack and Emi either side, the amount of creativity and how similar those two players are, drifting inside and be able to pass through the lines and split defences open, it's a striker's dream. I think even Keenan would manage to bag with those two either side. I don't just love him because he used to play for Getafe, who I wax lyrical about, but he'll almost certainly leave Norwich this season. There's no way I can see him playing in the Championship. He'd be on a cut price fee because Norwich have been relegated. I don't need to go into too much detail about the kind of player that he is because we've all seen him play in the Premier League this season. Leeds and West Ham are interested, but West Ham are interested in literally every single player that plays football. So I don't really take too much interest in those rumours. Yeah. Leeds would be tough competition, especially with Bielsa being Argentinian, just as Buendia is, and so that would be tough. But I don't know. He's a player that I would love to see play for Villa.
I think a lot of people have been looking at Buendia, and again, as I kind of mentioned about Villa fans criticising, Raid in the Championship, there's a lot of quality to be had from these three sides that have gone down. There really is. By no means am I saying they didn't deserve to get relegated, but you look at Watford's squad and you think, how on earth have they gone through 4 managers this season with this crop of players and still not managed to stay up? You look at the likes of Doucouré, players like that, you think they would walk into... Yes, and Sarr, exactly. I mean, these are players who would walk into comfortably 14 Premier League sides, I'd say. My final pick of a player it's going to be a bit of a weird one again. Raid in the Championship, I know, and I'd hate to prey on the vulnerable, but Wigan are in an absolutely terrible position, and a player who I've seen a fair few times this season in the flesh, and I've got to say, Dan, I'm a huge fan of him. He had a move to AC Milan fall through in the January, and he's only going to be available for £1.5 million. It's Anthony Robinson, USA men's national team player. He's been capped. This kid is the real deal, and for the price, it's a no-brainer. He could go to genuinely any club. I mean, the fact that AC Milan were even interested, it is definitely something to go by. If you've not seen what Robinson's like, he's the epitome of a modern-day fullback, getting beyond the winger, putting balls in the box. Scored a fair few goals this season as well. I believe he got on the score sheet in the mauling of Hull. But I mean, I was on the score sheet against Hull. So that's nothing to go by. But no, he's a wonderful left back, especially for the price. Clearly got bags of potential. And to be honest, you've just, as I say, you've just got to look at the fact that AC Milan were interested. And whilst Serie A is a difficult league, I'd like to describe it as, and a frustrating one when you see the quality of players that the likes of both Milan teams sign, and you see where they finish up. But they have a very good scouting system, and I mean, what is £1.5 million for someone who would provide fantastic competition for Matt Targett? Neil Taylor as well. Didn't really put a foot wrong during the lockdown, but you've got to constantly look to better your squad, and I think Anthony Robinson would be a fantastic addition to that, Dan.
Yeah, no, he's a good player, mate. Formerly of Everton, I believe. Before he made that switch to Wigan, he's absolutely electric down that left wing. And AC Milan were looking at him in January. I think it was only because there was problems with a medical or a visa or something like that it fell through. He very nearly made that switch. I think fullbacks, we definitely need at least one. Just for competition, because I think Fred and Matt, what you don't want to see them get is comfortable, because I think that's when you see players drop off in form if they know that regardless of how they play, that they're going to be starting the next week, because there's no doubt that those two players are superior to Elmo and Neil. I think for that fee, mate. Again, I think it's good that we're picking out these players, mate, because they fit the profile of Villa, what we seem to be going for. And yeah, you're absolutely right, mate. These sort of young players who have big potential and just going to increase in value every season is exactly what Villa are going to be after.
Absolutely. Final pick from you, Dan, before we round off this podcast. I'm intrigued to see who you've got. I feel like, as I say, we've profiled some great players. Villa, we'll let you have these ones for free. Anyone else in the future will start charging.
Yeah. Yeah. I debating my last pick. I was tossing Christopher Julian from Celtic, just as a bit of competition, centre back who I liked. But the striker is a very much a pipe dream, mate. Is a player that I think a few people are going to listen to and ask what the hell I'm talking about, because he was linked with some massive clubs earlier on the season. It's Daniel Marlin from PSV. Yes, I know this lad is unbelievable. 11 goals, 5 assists in 14 Eredivisie games. Until he's got 3 in 4 in the Europa League. This was all until December, when a knee injury hit him. He had surgery and it just wipes him out for the rest of the season. That I think works in smaller clubs' favour, because it just takes him off the radar. Arsenal were apparently looking at him in March or so, but the news yesterday broke that Aubameyang is close to signing a new contract, and so I don't think they'll be in the striker market. Transfer market has him down at just being 22 million. He's not exactly an aerial presence, but he's someone that I think would work well with or instead of Wesley, just providing that completely something different. He's 21 years old. He's played in England previously. He was previously of Arsenal before he moved to Ajax and then eventually to PSV. So, he's had experience of playing in England before. He stated a desire to return to England one day. His agent is Mino Raiola, who again who deals heavily in the Premier League. We've seen him pull off some big deals. And a move that he made in a very similar capacity was Moisican to Everton. Cairn was a player who was tearing up at Juve. No one saw him making that switch to Everton. But he pulled it off, and the Premier League has such a pull that I think with the spotlight having gone off Marlon with that injury, the other clubs looking elsewhere. I think there's a chance for sides of Villa's ilk to go and make a move for players like that. And if you can get him for around £20 million, mate, then I don't know. It's worth a shot, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a soft spot for Dutch players as well. I love.
Yeah, I knew this.
So that does it for me. I mean, he linked up very nicely with Steven Bergwijn before he made his moves to Tottenham as well. So benefits from being with a pacey winger. Hopefully, we're in the market for that. I can't argue with that, Dan. I think that's it's a solid suggestion. I think a lot of people will turn their noses up at it though, given the lack of being proven. But I mean, there's no risk, there's no reward. Look at the last striker we signed from PSV, Luka Nilis, exactly. World-class striker. Only scored 1 goal for Villa, and it was an absolute worldie. So
that's all that matters.
You never know. You never know, Dan. And I think that's a really good place to round it up on the Transfer Rumour Mill podcast that we're doing for the Villa Filler. Some great players have been named. Obviously, just like to say again before the podcast ends, by no way are we in the know. We're not these insane scouts either. We're just people who watch football every single day. And we take note of these things. So Villa, if you do sign any of these players, I do expect me and Dan get a check through the post first of all. Maybe not for Benrahma and Watkins, because that the writing's on the wall with them guys, hopefully, touch wood. But yeah, it's as always, Dan, it's been great speaking with you, knowing that we're safe in the Premier League, and Villa are looking to build from where we were last time. So hopefully the next time we speak, Dan, we'll be talking about some transfers, maybe. Maybe even an away kit. So we'll just have to wait and see. We can dream. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, please do hit the like button. We really appreciate the support we got on the final day and the patience you guys have had with us as well. My laptop had been in the shop for the best part of a month, and I've been here, there, and everywhere in the UK. So we appreciate you guys for persevering with us. It really does mean a lot. We didn't hit the 2,000 subscriber goal for the Samatta shirt giveaway. I think no one wanted a Samatta shirt, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't
Dan and I will speak about running another giveaway for a subscriber goal for the end of the season. Obviously, if you guys hit it earlier, we can sort that out for you guys. So yeah, just to reward you guys for sticking with us. So we really do appreciate it. Subscribe for more. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, iTunes, whatever your preferred podcast listening platform is, please leave a review, follow, do whatever you can. It really does help us. So yeah, we'll see you guys hopefully soon with some news. Up the Villa.
Chester's essential. The fulfilling this got potential. It's a main man, a hero. He's the main leader of the gang.